Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Tao, and I'm the host of the Data Standard Audio Experience. Today on our show, we have Elliot Winard, the engineering manager at Spotify. And today we're speaking about data and leadership. So, welcome to the show, Elliot. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Hey, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And could you just go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience and tell us more about your background?
I'm Elliot Winard. I'm an engineering manager at Spotify, and I currently lead a team of folks that work on machine learning models and data and services that are used in different parts of the Spotify app. I've learned so much at Spotify. I consider my current job my fourth job that I've had at Spotify. All of the things that I've done have been related to data and machine learning in some way. My background is in computer science and AI. Just after college, I spent time writing C code to get little shoebox-sized robots to zoom around quickly at the AI lab at Stanford Research Institute. Then I worked at some small and medium-sized tech companies. I learned a lot about the process of building software and doing agile development at startups like Laszlo Systems and at more established companies like Macromedia. I got a lot closer to user-centered design and business strategy when I was working in New York at Frog Design. And that's when I started managing people. And I also got really interested in data when I worked on a project to help the UN develop this thing called the Humanitarian Data Exchange, which is a central place for aid workers to share humanitarian data. On the personal side, I love listening to and making music. I work on artificial intelligence stuff at work, but I'm fascinated by the development of human intelligence. I'm amazed every day at the stuff that my two kids come up with. And I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're so excited to have you today. It's so interesting to hear about your past experiences that you brought up, especially working from small to medium-sized companies to now working at a huge company like Spotify. And so I wanted to jump into that a bit. So initially, you mentioned that you worked in a small consulting company of about 20 people or so, and soon it was acquired by Spotify. And so what was the change like going from a small 20-person company to a much larger corporation?
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny. 6 years ago, I was the director of engineering at Seed Scientific. We were a 20-person company. We helped people in commercial and social sectors understand the value of their data. We designed and built new products and services and platforms for folks. So we did a bunch of data collection and custom algorithms and models and data visualization. We got acquired by Spotify and merged with the Spotify analytics team. So this was an eye-opening experience. I went from a company that had 7 engineers to a company that had 700 engineers. We went from using AWS and hosted services for everything to working at a company that ran its own server closets and had what I had read was possibly the largest Hadoop cluster in the EU. At Seed, we were basically one or two rooms in Tribeca in New York City. And I was at a company that had dozens of engineering teams working on different projects and was in multiple floors of a building. So I spent my first few months trying to understand Spotify's business, how the music industry works, and how product development works at Spotify. We built up the organization in analytics based on Spotify's agile at scale model. So we created a bunch of autonomous and cross-functional teams that built internal analytical products and insights. So what stuck out to me was the empathy that I felt talking to other managers and engineers and agile coaches at Spotify. Even though people were working on different parts of the org and on different parts of the product, they were really happy to get in a room and whiteboard out the kind of problems that I was trying to solve and really help me solve my problems.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so great to hear all of your experiences here at Spotify as well. And one thing that you mentioned to me offline that is a huge part of your work is the machine learning and recommendation aspects of the work you do at Spotify. And so there's a lot of different things that you have to think about when building these with your team. And so what are some challenges that you've faced on the back end side of the back end development here?
Yeah, good question. There are challenges at every phase of the machine learning cycle. We spend a lot of time working on the data that's being used to train the models and generate our embeddings. And on the other side, on the infrastructure used to serve serve predictions. So we have different ways that we want to serve predictions at batch and real time. So on the training side, we have a tremendous volume of data. There's 70 million tracks. There's almost 3 million podcast titles. We have 4 billion user generated playlists. There's over 350 million active users. So when it comes to training, we found value in both iterating on the data and the shape of the data used to train the models, and in tweaking, changing hyperparameters to improve our recommendations. So that's on the training side. On the serving side, we've worked with a bunch of different ways to combine different models, to work with different embeddings that we have, different representations and relationships between users and music. So we have some collaborative filtering based models. We have some NLP approaches. We have knowledge graphs. We have different models that we use for podcasts and music. And the scale here is also pretty interesting. So we have some systems that only serve a few dozen requests per second, but we have other systems that serve hundreds of thousands of requests a second. So definitely scale has been a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to hear that you just mentioned that there's a lot of different models for different things on Spotify, whether it be specifically for the podcast, for different episodes, for different music choices. So it's really interesting to hear about that. And for the data that you work with, how recent does the data need to stay up to date with what you're working on in order for it to give accurate precision and accurate outcomes?
It really depends on the case. One product that we support is something called Discover Weekly. It's 30 songs that go to every user every week. So for Discover Weekly, we only need to generate that weekly. And in order to do that, we use daily partitions of tracks and of user interactions. So in the past, that historical approach has worked really well. We are experimenting with different approaches to making recommendations that need to be updated more than once a day. So we're working on ML models that take user context or recent listening into account to make more relevant recommendations. So in order to provide more relevant recommendations, you need more up to date than the daily recommendations. We're also working on a few different cold start problems. So how do you make recommendations for new users where we don't have much listening history and we don't know much about their musical taste? How do we recommend newly released tracks? These are some of the interesting problems that we're working on right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really interested to see just the outcomes of all of the things that you're working on. You are working in a specific position that has to do with a lot of leadership and management as well, while still being very technical on the data side. And so how do you work with your team to really ensure that there is effective communication and collaboration?
Yeah, this has been challenging during the pandemic. Everybody comes from a different place. Everybody comes from a different family situation and has different responsibilities. So we rely pretty heavily on the agile process. We are constantly evolving our ways of working. We have 2-week sprints and sprint planning and grooming sessions. We give demos at the end of every sprint. So that's on the execution and delivery side. But we also have regular kind of more social events. So we have regular weekly happy hours where we play different online games. We also take surveys within our team and within a bunch of different teams in our organization where we ask folks like, hey, how are you doing? How is the health, your perception of the people health and the tech health on this team? So one interesting thing that we found with these regular surveys was that people felt like they were giving a lot of feedback to each other, but felt like we weren't getting a lot of feedback. So we took that insight from the fact that like there was a difference between people's perception of the feedback they were giving and receiving, and started putting together workshops that on giving and receiving feedback. What that led to was, better communication and better collaboration. We gave people the tools that they needed in order to communicate and collaborate better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important working on, especially a technical team, is just the communication and collaboration aspect and making sure that everybody is well aligned. So great to hear it from your perspective as well. And Elliot, I wanted to say thank you so much for being on the Data Standard. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. We at the Data Standard, we're trying to build a community where everyone can just collaborate and network with each other. And everyone comes from a different data professional background. So what is something that we could do for you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I would love to connect with my peers in the data community. I'm up for networking opportunities, for sharing ways of working and strategies. I've worked at large companies and small companies, at consulting companies and product companies, and I'm happy to swap stories with folks and to help other people grow. I really believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and I would love to connect with folks.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll make sure to connect you with other people within our community also. And where can everyone find you online to connect with you?
Please reach out via LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm not very active on social networking, but that's a good place to reach me.
Yeah, fantastic. And to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Elliot, for joining us. It was so great to have you on the show today, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yeah, I look forward as well. Thanks.